You wake up every day at the same time, do the same things, live through the same hollow gestures, and when someone asks how you're doing, you respond, "I'm fine." But you're not fine. You know you're not. Your body knows. Your mind knows. Only you keep pretending that this life makes sense. Sartre said that we are condemned to be free, but you have condemned yourself to be a slave to a routine you didn't choose. And the worst part, you call this responsibility. Today, you'll understand why discontent with your own life is the first sign that you're still alive, and why admitting this hatred is the only path to liberation. If you've ever woken up thinking, "I can't take this life anymore," leave a comment below. It's just a phrase, but it could be the beginning of your personal revolution. And if this video reminds you of someone living on autopilot for years, share it. They need to hear this. The first lie you need to stop telling yourself is that your routine is normal. Waking up unwillingly, working without purpose, coming home exhausted, watching anything on TV, sleeping, and doing it all over again. You call this adulthood, but your subconscious calls it slow death. Sartre had a name for it, bad faith. It's when you lie to yourself to avoid the responsibility of choice. It's when you pretend you have no options when in reality you're afraid to use the ones you have. Your routine isn't unavoidable. It's a choice you've made and continue to make every single day. And the discontent you feel is your own being crying out that you're betraying who you truly are. The problem isn't that you lack energy. The problem is that you expend all your energy trying to like a life you despise. You force smiles, invent enthusiasm, rationalize the emptiness. And at the end of the day, you're exhausted, not because you did something meaningful, but because you spent the entire day fighting against your own authenticity. This is unsustainable. And deep down, you already know this. Jean-Paul Sartre understood the psychology of self-deception better than anyone. For him, human freedom is absolute, but it's also utterly terrifying, because being free means you are responsible for everything that happens in your life. Every choice, every omission, every yes you give when you really want to say no. That's why most people prefer to live in bad faith. They prefer to believe they have no choice. He prefers to convince himself that routine is unavoidable, that work is mandatory, and that life is nothing but this inescapable monotony. But Sartre knew, we are what we make of what has been done to us. You might have been born into a specific family, a particular social condition, with certain limitations. But what you do with all of that, this is entirely your responsibility. And when you live a routine you did not consciously choose, you are relinquishing your most fundamental freedom, the freedom to define who you are. Self-deception works like this. You take a temporary situation and turn it into a permanent identity. That's just who I am. Life is like that. Everyone goes through this. These phrases are strategies to escape accountability. Because admitting that you hate your routine means accepting that you have the power to change it. And for most people, that is more terrifying than continuing to suffer. Sartre said that anguish is the feeling of freedom. When you realize that you could live entirely differently, you feel vertigo. It's like standing on the edge of a cliff. You know you could jump, and that terrifies you. So, you step back. You return to the safe, predictable, deadening routine. But that safety is an illusion. You're not protected. You are trapped. I know a 35-year-old man who has worked at the same company for 12 years. Every day he wakes up at 6:30 a.m., drinks the same coffee, takes the same transportation, sits at the same desk, works on the same spreadsheets. During breaks, he complains about life with his colleagues. At the end of the day, he goes home too exhausted to do anything meaningful. On weekends, he sleeps late and binge-watches series to rest from the week. When asked about making changes, he always gives the same answer: "I can't risk it. I have bills to pay." But the truth is different. He has savings. He has qualifications. He has contacts. What he lacks is the courage to admit that he despises the life he's built. Because admitting that would mean acknowledging he wasted more than a decade living like a ghost. He rationalizes his suffering. Everyone hates Mondays. Work isn't supposed to be enjoyable. When I retire, then I'll really live. He's turned despair into a life philosophy, and now he's trapped in his own narrative. He's not truly living, he's merely surviving himself. And the worst part, he calls that maturity. Sartre would say that this man is an existential coward, not because he lacks physical courage, but because he lacks the courage to confront his own liberty. He prefers to be a victim of circumstances rather than the author of his own life. And this choice, which is indeed a choice, is killing every shred of authenticity within him. Reality is brutal, but necessary. You are not a victim of your routine. You are an accomplice to it. Every morning you wake up and repeat the same gestures without question. You are voting for your life to remain unchanged. Every time you say, "I have no choice," you are choosing not to see the options available to you. Every time you rationalize the emptiness, you are building the bars of your own prison. You convinced yourself that this life is unavoidable because then you don't have to take responsibility for changing it. It's easier to be a victim than to be the protagonist. The victim bears no blame. The victim bears no responsibility. The victim merely suffers, and passive suffering is more comfortable than transformative action. But Sartre had no patience for existential victimhood. To him, even in extreme situations, he was imprisoned during World War II, you still have choices. You may not control what happens to you, but you control how you respond to what happens. And your response to the routine you despise has been accept, rationalize, repeat. You have developed a toxic relationship with your own suffering. You have grown accustomed to it. You have tamed it. Now it no longer bothers you. It simply consumes you from within, silently. You have become an expert at living against yourself. And this expertise in self-sabotage is what keeps you trapped. If any part of this message has made you question the life you're living, mark that moment in the comments. That's where change begins. And if what I've said so far resonated, leave a like, not for me, but to mark this moment of awareness. I know another man. At 40 years old, he had a solid career, a financed house, a stable marriage. On the outside, he seemed to have everything society defines as success. Inside, he was dying. He woke up every morning with a sense of emptiness he couldn't explain. He could no longer pretend to be enthusiastic about his work. He could no longer force superficial conversations. He could no longer live on autopilot. One day, he stopped trying to like his own life. He simply admitted, "I hate this. I hate this routine. I hate this version of myself." And that admission, honest, brutal, free of rationalizations, was what set him free. He didn't change everything all at once, but he altered his relationship with dissatisfaction itself. Instead of fighting it, he listened to it. Instead of hiding it, he respected it. That dissatisfaction wasn't a disease. It was the last remnant of authentic life within him. It was his soul crying out for help. Gradually, he began making different choices, small ones at first. He changed his route to work. He started saying no to commitments that didn't make sense. He stopped pretending to enjoy things he hated. And these small ruptures created space for larger transformations. Today, 5 years later, he lives a completely different life. Not because he found the magic formula for happiness, but because he stopped lying to himself. He understood that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action despite fear. And that freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's taking responsibility for the consequences of your choices. Sartre would say that this man experienced an existential awakening. He stopped being a passive object of circumstances and became the subject of his own life. He understood that we are condemned to be free and that this condemnation is, in fact, a blessing in disguise. Sartre didn't believe in gradual changes when it came to authenticity. To him, genuine transformation is always revolutionary. You don't negotiate with self-deception, you destroy it. You don't reform the lie, you abandon it completely. The first step is the hardest, admitting that you hate the life you're living. Not minimizing, not relativizing, not looking for blame, simply recognizing, this life no longer serves me. I betrayed myself. I abandoned myself. And now I need to find myself again. The second step is even more terrifying, taking full responsibility for the change. No one will save you, no one will give you permission, no one will show you the way. You are the only one responsible for escaping the prison you built yourself, and that responsibility is terrifying. But it's also liberating. The third step is action. No endless planning, no perpetual preparation, no waiting for the perfect moment. Action. A different choice. A gesture of rupture. A decision that proves to yourself that you're still alive, still in control, still able to choose. Sartre knew that freedom is achieved through exercise. You don't become free by thinking about freedom. You become free by making free choices. And the first free choice is always the hardest, choosing to stop accepting the unacceptable. The existential revolution begins when you stop asking, "How am I going to do this?" and start affirming, "This will end." When you cease seeking guarantees and begin taking risks. When you stop being a victim of circumstances and start becoming the author of your own story. You don't need more self-help. You don't need more advice. You don't need more motivation. You need honesty. Brutal, surgical, anesthetic-free honesty. You already know what is wrong in your life. You already know what needs to change. You already know which choices you are postponing. The problem isn't a lack of information. The problem is an excess of rationalization. You've become an expert at finding excuses not to act. It's not the right time. Conditions aren't ideal. I need to prepare myself better. All of these are strategies to escape responsibility. Sartre would say you're acting in bad faith with your own dissatisfaction. You feel the discontent, recognize the emptiness, identify the problem, but refuse to accept that you have the power to resolve it. Because accepting this power also means accepting responsibility for the time you've wasted accepting the unacceptable. The truth is, you're afraid of your own freedom. You're afraid to discover who you truly are beneath all these layers of conformity. You're afraid to live an authentic life because you don't know if you'll like the person you find. But that fear is normal. Sartre called this existential angst, the vertigo of realizing that you could be anyone, live any life, make any choice. It's terrifying to hold so much power over your own destiny. It's easier to pretend you have no choice, but you do. You always have. And the more you delay exercising this freedom, the more you become a prisoner of your own cowardice. Because every day you choose to live against yourself, you become more distant from who you truly are. The time has come to decide. You can continue pretending that your routine is acceptable, that your dissatisfaction is normal, that your life is on the right track. You can keep being a supporting actor in your own story, an extra in your own existence. Or you can admit that you hate the life you're living, and that this isn't a problem but a solution, because only those who recognize their emptiness have a chance to fill it with something real. Only those who admit their lies can begin to live in truth. Sartre knew that authenticity requires courage. Courage to defy expectations. Courage to forsake false securities. Courage to live without guarantees. Courage to be judged, misunderstood, questioned. But he also knew that the alternative is worse. Because living in bad faith is dying alive. It's wasting the only gift you truly possess, the ability to choose who you want to be. You weren't born to live on autopilot. You weren't born to accept mere crumbs of existence. You weren't born to be a prisoner of your own routine. You were born to be free, even if that freedom hurts, even if it scares, even if it changes everything you know. The existential revolution begins now. It starts with a straightforward, honest admission. I hate the life I'm living, and that needs to change. Now tell me, are you still going to pretend everything's okay? Or will you admit that you hate this life and finally do something for yourself? Write it in the comments. It's your contract to break free from lies. And if you want to keep hearing truths that no one else dares to tell you, subscribe. Here, illusions do not survive. Sartre knew the revolution begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. And you? When will you stop?